Alrighty, so today we're going to do a season preview of DC United, and my oh my, this offseason has been crazy for DC United. I think this is probably one of the craziest offseason I have seen a team gone through during this period, because during the time of this offseason, they got rid of their GM. They decided to assign their interim head coach Chad Ashton to another role. They got rid of 12 players, pretty much half of their roster, and then they replaced with a bunch of signing. And that, in other words, basically this offseason is a Wayne Rooney show. Like, it's basically DC United just giving Wayne Rooney whatever he wants in terms of shaping up this to be a decent team. And yet, despite all that, I feel like this team is very similar to the Houston Dynamo about a season ago, where there's just so much unknown about this team. Just so much about how, we don't know if this team is going to be decent. We don't know if the roster that Wayne Rooney built is going to be a playoff contender. And that I also want to say that, just looking at this team in general, I feel like it could be a boom and bust team. It could be a team that, if everything goes right, I think they could be a playoff contender. But if things goes wrong, then oh boy, it can definitely go wrong, and can definitely look like last season. Which, if you're as any DC United fans, they definitely don't want to remember last season, where they win the wooden spoon with a 7-6-21 record and finish with 27 points. I believe that's like the worst record that DC United has ever had in their franchise history. Or actually, no, I don't know if that, of course, is the case, because I remember there was one year that they also finished dead last. But coincidentally, I think that was like 2013, and somehow they still won the U.S. Open Cup despite finishing last in the standings. But in terms of the last 5 seasons, yeah, the last 3 seasons, it's been headache for DC United fans. Following their wooden spoon year, where they finished 7-6-21 and finished in 14 plays with 27 points. In 2021, it was a bit of a heartbreaking year, because they were so close of making the playoffs. They were 1 point away from making the playoffs, but they finished in 8th place with 14-5-15 record and finished with 47 points. But then in the COVID-shortened year, it didn't get any better for them. 5-6-21 and only 21 points, and finished in 13th position. But prior to that, in 2019, this was back when Wayne Rooney was still with this team as a player. They finished 5th place with a 13-11-10 record and finished with 50 points, but lost to Toronto FC in the first round, in a matchup that I'm pretty sure DC fans don't want to remember, especially what happened in extra time in that game. And then in 2018, this was really where DC was kind of at the peak of the power, at least for recent years, where, we talk about the Lucharu kind of connection, where Lucho Acosta and Wayne Rooney, 2 of the best dynamic duo we've seen in league history. And they were able to finish in 4th place with 14-9-11 record and finish with 51 points. But unfortunately, they did lose to the Columbus Crew in the conference semifinal. And again, they lost this one. Well, actually not in extra time this time, but it's on a PK shootout. Now, in terms of some of the transfer that they bought in, and boy, this is where we get to the fun part, because again, they made a lot of signings, and a lot of players are moving on from this team. Starting with Mohamed Jihid, the left back from Hammarby in Sweden. They've got Derek Williams that they got from the LA Galaxy. And then there's the big move of this offseason, and many said that this is pretty much Wayne Rooney guy from Leeds United in Matsud Kile, or actually not Leeds, I'm sorry. I think he's plays for Derby County, or was it Leeds though? It's either one of this club, but you get what I've said, that this was a guy that there's been a lot of hype around the fact that he is the answer in terms of being that creative player that they have not had since Lucho Acosta left this team. And then they also got a big acquisition in terms of the free agency market by getting Juan from Orlando City. And then they also got Tyler Miller, who most likely is going to be their future goalkeeper, knowing the fact that Bill Hamid has moved on. And also them thinking that they can revitalize David Ochoa's career. Yeah, that didn't quite work out for him. They also got Pedro Santos from Columbus Crew, who maybe be on his swan song season, because I don't know how many years he has left in the tank, knowing the fact that he's getting to that age where maybe with the decline of production, that maybe he's thinking about hanging up the boots. And then they also got Alex Bono from TFC, and again, I think that it's still going to be a battle between Miller and Bono for that starting goalkeeping spot, but I'm assuming most likely Miller might win that starting keeping spot. Actually, now that I think about it, it could be close because, Bono, he was kind of the starting goalkeeper for TFC, and I want to say kind of because TFC basically went with a revolving door of goalkeeper. They were putting Bono in one game, then they put Westberg in one game, and then they kind of switch around, and I'm not sure if Wayne Rooney probably is going to do the same thing. And especially, I know Tyler Miller wants to lock up that spot because he knows he kind of was tired of being the backup goalkeeper for Minnesota United, and that's probably the reason why he decided to come to DC United and once again be the starting goalkeeper of an MLS team. Now, in terms of some of the transfers or some of the players that is no longer with this team, and there was a lot of them. Brad Smith to start off, he went to the Houston Dynamo. Tony Alfaro, he went to NYCFC. David Ochoa obviously went to Liga MX with Atletico St. Louis. Drew Skunrich, one of the depth pieces that they had, went to Colorado Springs back in the USL Championship. Rafael Romo, no longer with this team. Kamar Smith, Sofran Jafal, who of course went to Austin FC. And then you got a couple of guys that still have not been able to find a club. One of those guys is Ola Kamara. I'm really surprised that Ola Kamara is still in the free agency market because Kamara, yes, he is starting to get up to that age a little bit, but he can still be a proven goal scorer for an MLS team. And I'm kind of surprised that there's definitely certain MLS team that could use the likes of Ola Kamara up front in terms of the goal scoring, and that again I'm kind of surprised that he's still in the free agency market. Bill Hamid, of course, no longer with this team, and that's kind of a bittersweet ending for DC fans seeing their starlet goalkeeper eventually move on. I mean, he's been injured a lot lately. I mean, I think they just realized that it's not going to get any better, and maybe they need to move into a new direction with him. They also no longer have Chris Odell Ashim, Adrian Perez, Sami Guderi, and John Keppen as one of the backup goalkeeper. And again, a lot of these players are depth pieces and just kind of part of the last year's team that some of them was actually regular starters that just clearly was not good enough or even close to MLS caliber kind of level of players to be starting week in and week out. Now, looking at the strength of this team, still gotta say it's gotta be the attack that I think is the strength for this team. I mean, on the attack they have some decent players. They got Rodriguez there on the left wing, followed by Benteke, and that's assuming if Christian Benteke can start to look like the Benteke that we saw doing his time with Liverpool, and less maybe doing his time with Crystal Palace. They also get Taxi Funtas back, and that's definitely great news for DC fans because there was a lot of uncertainty with the whole racial allegation that was against Taxi Funtas in that game against Inter Miami, and it turns out that the league didn't find anything serious to sanction him, and that he's gonna be back with this team, and that overall in the front three, I think it's a decent some front three. And again, it's one that I can definitely see that there is goals that can be found on this team, but that of course is due if everything of course goes right, and you're gonna hear me say that a lot because that's kind of what DC really need to hope for if they want to make it to the playoffs, where all the pieces that they have, or at least most of the pieces that they sign in the offseason, needs to hit the ground running. Now, in terms of the weakness, I still think it's the back line. That is going to be a weakness. Now, despite the fact that it is a complete reshaped back line, I think the only player that is still part of this back line for this upcoming season is Steven Birnbaum, but other than that, they got a new left back in Mohamed Jahid. They got a new center back Steven Birnbaum is going to get a new center back partner with Derek Williams, and Derek Williams doing his time with the Galaxy, it was kind of mediocre. I mean, it wasn't great, it wasn't spectacular, and that's the reason why the Galaxy decided to move on from him. And then of course in the right back position, of course getting Juan there in that slot. And while Juan, I always will consider him one of the best fullbacks in the league, the biggest weakness of Juan, I still think, is on his defensive game. Because while he is a guy that can definitely bomb forward on the attack and can really outpace any players on the field, because he's probably like the fastest player in the league right now. I mean, have you seen how fast he is in terms of on a dead sprint when he trying to go forward on the attack? I mean, Orlando City fans will definitely tell you all about that. But despite all that, again, there's that question of if every pieces is going to hit well, and that, I don't know if this reshaped back line is going to be an improvement or an upgrade to what we saw last year in terms of that back line, which was an absolute disaster. And then, of course, the midfield depth is an issue. And again, depth is something that I think Wayne Rooney is going to really focus on this team, because this team has been hammered with injuries for the past couple of seasons. Like, they have not had a single season where I think they have not had at least like 4 or 5 back-breaking injury to their roster. And I know obviously injuries will happen to a team, but this team has been snake bitten with the injury curse a lot of time in the past couple of years, and that is the reason why they really desperately need depth, especially in that midfield position. But obviously, the free big question coming in this season for DC, I mean, just in general, how is this team going to look heading into this season? Like, anytime when you have a team that looks kind of new, I always think that it's kind of like an expansion team. There's so many question and so much unknown, and that things, of course, could go well and things can go very terribly. And I talk about the back line being a question. You know, the goalkeeping is a question, with the way that, you know, as much as I think Tyler Miller might be the starting goalkeeper, during his time with Minnesota United, especially during the latter time, he looked like a shell of his old self, and we'll see if he can get himself back to his old self. Because if he's like that guy with Minnesota when he was the starting goalkeeper week in and week out, then I think DC might have got a good replacement for Bill Hamid. And the same goes with Alex Bono. I mean, if Bono can just somehow find a way to look like the Alex Bono from a couple of years ago, maybe he gets the starting spot. And then in the midfield, there's the question of, is Ravel Morrison, who I think he was kind of a disappointment last season. I mean, there was a lot of people were raving the fact that he could be a decent player, but I just didn't really see that with this team. And there's a question of him, if he's going to be decent there in that midfield spot. And I already talked about the depth of this midfield, which is not very, very strong. And then on the attacking end, again, I mentioned already before, it depends on if Benteke can be like the Benteke that we've seen a couple of years ago, scoring goals for fun, and not like the Benteke of last season, where, yeah, there was time where Benteke was kind of frustrated to watch, even as a neutral, of how many big chances that he, of course, was missed and so forth. So, yeah, there's a lot of question heading into this team, and whether or not if this team can legitimately be a decent team, or this team can just fall apart. And then, of course, the other big question is the big signing in Metsu Kilic. And again, I apologize if I completely butcher that name. I'll promise I'll get better in terms of pronouncing his name. But yeah, there's that question. Is he worth the DP tag? And especially the fact that he is 32 years old. And I think, didn't he come off of a bad injury before signing with DC United? Yeah, there's that big question of, is he the main playmaker of this team? And is he the guy that will be the guy that can be the creative player, and could be a guy that maybe get 10 plus assists for this team. And then lastly, I think the big question of this team, kind of going back to what I said about the first big question, is that if things does not work out for this team, is this team going to just completely blow it up? And I think the answer most likely is yes, because, Wayne Rooney, he's only on a 12-month contract. And that, again, if this team have a disastrous season like they did last year, I expect they're going to blow it up again. And it's frustrating if you're a DC fans, because, I mean, again, if you're a DC fans, I don't know, do you have a lot of hope about how this season is going to go? I mean, do you think that this season is going to be as good as last season? I mean, yes, they did make a lot of signings in terms of changing the team, but there's also that unknown factor if you change so much to your roster. And we have seen before where teams have done that, and some teams have been able to be successful when they change the roster and stuff like that. But then we also have seen teams that have decided to just completely change the roster and kind of going through a retool period, and also kind of in some way going almost like an all-in kind of period, which I think that's another word I haven't said with this DC team, but I think maybe it's fair to label that they're kind of in a little bit of an all-in push, knowing the fact if Wayne Rooney is only on a 12-month contract, he's probably not going to be there if things turns out to be a disaster for this team. So yeah, that again, if you're a DC fan, it's a really big unknown, and sometimes that's not really a fun thing to do, because as a Quakes fan myself, I know what it feels like, especially I think it was 2019 where there was a lot unknown of how this team is going to do well, or actually maybe in 2021 where there's a lot of unknown, until I found out that Almeida was still there, and yeah, it didn't quite work out so well for them. And then obviously the bonus big question of this team is, how many goals would Taxi Funtas and Benteke would score combined? I mean, my over and under will be maybe 15 goals combined for both team, and I'll say the over, because I think Taxi Funtas will be the guy that can score 10 plus goal. I mean, heck, last year when he showed up with DC, it was incredible how he was banging goals left and right. He was getting the newcomer of the year kind of vote because of how he was scoring every single day. And this is with a DC team that doesn't have a lot of good creativity on this team. So again, going back to what I said about Mateus Klic, if he can be the guy that can be the creative player, deliver the balls to Taxi Fuentes and Benteke, they could definitely be a team that can score a lot of goals and have that proven number 9 in this team. But there's the question is if that is of course going to be the case. So yeah, either way, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a DC fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and also the free big question heading into this season for your team. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.